Hi, hello, and guten tag. Welcome to Puma Cube. My name is Dead Bandito, and I'm here to tell you why I like Warhammer. Mainly 40k, a little bit of fantasy, I guess, but it's mainly on the 40k side. And the reason I'm here making this video telling you why I like Warhammer is I feel like it's a good outlet, and probably to annoy my friends less. 'Cause I already, anytime I could, explain or try to put in Warhammer in any little thing I can, just for me to like talk about it. And I guess it seems like making a video about it would be a better way for me to just talk about it. So for those who don't know what Warhammer is pretty much mainly a tabletop game. It's also story, video games, but what it originally came from is just tabletop. Basic war games. Get a model, paint the model, throw some dice with your friends, drinks a couple beers or whatever, and just have fun. Just socialize. Kind of playing little scenarios, whether it's just basic, just normal game, or making cool narrative, big stories, having your forces versus your friends, and all that. How I was introduced to Warhammer, I guess like any other person that was introduced to a bloated genre theme game, this was just mainly because of Space Marine. So I never grew up with tabletop gaming in general, like no war game, not even D&D. I mean, I grew up with Pokemon, but the card and stuff wasn't really like, I collected some of them, even Yu-Gi-Oh, but I never learned how to play, and to this day I don't know how to play any of those things. My brain is way too smooth, which is ironic because I am playing Warhammer or learning Warhammer. So, bit of irony there. So, how I was introduced to it was probably with most kids around, or people around my generation who didn't grow up with it as in the tabletop side, was probably mainly from the video game, mainly Space Marine, which is probably to this day, one of the best Warhammer video games out there, like top 5 or even top 3 next to Dawn of War and Total War. But it was mainly from the games, and then as I slowly got a bit older and I was like, I'm a bit of a nerd, but I don't know anything really specific of like what I want. And I was like, I'm gonna want to learn something. I want to learn some cool lore from some fictional world. And at the time it was mainly sci-fi. I was really into sci-fi. From there, I discovered more about Warhammer, and I kind of already knew what it was to the sense from the games, but nothing really deep. I just knew it was big dudes in power armor versus orcs, and I mainly played the demo a lot. Going through and trying to learn the Warhammer rabbit hole, I discovered their audio drama, which if you don't know what an audio drama is, it's just pretty much an audiobook with a bunch of extra like sound effects to make it more live-like. Kind of imagine like watching TV without the visual aspect. It's just the sound. So you're hearing all the sound effects. It's like almost like a movie. To the audio dramas, that's why I bought literal physical. Well, first it was the digital stuff, and then I bought actual DVDs. Or I say DVDs, CDs. They would be CDs of the audio dramas, and I was hooked into the audio dramas. Like, it just puts you in the world. The thing with audiobooks, and there's some audiobooks from it I really like, but my brain has an attention span of a 5-year-old at some points, and I have to like re-listen to one part sometimes like 5 times in order for me to retain that what happened. But with an audio drama, since there's so many things happening, I could easily visualize the world of Warhammer or 40k that I could see. Hooks me into the world more. And then from there, it just spiraled on down to more of the audio dramas, the books, and eventually the building, painting, and tabletop aspect after so many years. And then as I was learning more or getting more into the hobby, I learned many different aspects, which I think it really elevates of the whole game, the world, the universe, because there's so many aspects to the hobby, to Warhammer. It's not just, you could be interested in the building, the modeling, I guess that's the same thing, but you know what I'm saying, the painting, just the games, or even the lore. That's where we're gonna go into first, especially how I got into it. It was mainly the lore. So with the lore of Warhammer, I'm going to give a brief oversimplification, general kind of lore tidbits. If you want to learn about like deep into the lore of Warhammer, there's hundreds of channels out there that talk about the lore more entertaining and a lot better than I can. But the gist is that it's our universe, but 40,000 years ahead, excuse me. I might as well be 40 years, seeing how things are turning. 40,000 years in the future, and everything sucks. It's the grim dark future. If the term grim dark actually comes from Warhammer, if you ever heard that term, it's been coined by Warhammer Games Workshop, which is the company that owns or that makes Warhammer. So it's 40,000 years in the future. Everything sucks. Humanity, even though it's in some ways more advanced, but in others less, it's a bit weird than us, has regressed in the sense that they became really hyper zealot, xenophobic, and almost kind of like a weird religious fascist dictatorship in a sense. It's not really fascism, but it's close enough where you can see where it's coming from. But essentially, we have conquered thousands of stars and we're always at war, either with ourselves or with literal demons from hell or aliens. And it's constant war, no matter what. There's always a war happening, there's always fighting happening, there's always death happening. And I'm just going to talk about a little bit of the factions I like, kind of do a little explanation. And I mean, all the factions are kind of cool and unique. I think there's something good about them all. But, well, you know what? I'm just going to tell you all the factions. So you have the Imperial Man, which is the human faction, and there's many sub-factions. I'm only going to get to, like, some of them. So you have, like, Imperial Guard, which is your average everyday soldier, fighting the literal horrors of the universe to protect humanity best as they can without dying. You know, Space Marines, which is pretty much the poster child of Warhammer. A lot of people get in because of Space Marines. I got in because of the literal game Space Marines got me in to Warhammer. And these are just genetically modified super soldiers that are just like almost godlike beings. In lore, normal humans refer to them as demigods because they're just like these giant hulking 7 to 8 foot tall, 300-pound and 1 ton power, 1 to 2 ton power armor, like freaking fast as hell, like a blur, and just destroy armies. Just like a squad, which is like 5 guys, give or take, could take out like almost an army easily. Then you have your Sisters Battles. Essentially, they're nuns with guns, and pretty much female Space Marines in the closest sense. There's no female Space Marines, which that's just another rabbit hole thing I'm just not gonna get into. I don't even want to talk about it. But they're pretty much essentially the closest thing, and they're cool. Their whole aesthetic, the whole non-Catholic thing is so awesome. It's, they look freaking cool. You also have your Grey Knights, where essentially they are Space Marines, but they're demon hunters. That's like their main specialty, is like hunting demons and killing those who've been near demons, whether they fought demons or not. Yeah, not a good time if you're a guardsman fighting demons, and then you have Grey Knights coming in to help you fight demons, because they have a Scorchers policy more than one, if you catch my drift. You also have the Custodes and the Sisters of Silence, which are essentially bodyguard for the Emperor. You also have your Chaos faction, who essentially are just demons and people who worship gods, demons, pretty much like Satan, but 4 different ones, and they all represent 4 different aspects of humanity, whether it be physical, mental, or spiritual, in some form or fashion. And you have like humans, Space Marines who get like corrupted, and you have, like I said, literal demons coming in and just doing demon shenanigans. Whether that may entail, I'll let that, up to you. So you have like 4 chaos gods, one of them being Khorne, which is blood, murder, slaughter, slaughter. He's very simple because all he wants is to kill things in a brutal fashion. Then you have Papa Nurgle, which I feel like that was fitting there. Excuse me. His whole thing is pestilence in like plague, disease, and rot, kind of the whole zombie vibe, like the Resident Evil body horror type of like thing, just pus and rot. And his thing is like disgusting, but in a cool aesthetic way, like the horrifying thing. Like I'll get into one of my favorite Chaos Space Marine faction later, but essentially his thing is just decay and rot, like plagues and stuff, lots of plagues. And then you have Tzeentch, which his thing is all just shenanigans, trickery, changing fates and stuff. Bunch of magician stuff. His thing is kind of more on the Eldritch side of like, oh, I could do this while doing this, if that makes sense. Probably doesn't. Anyways, his thing is all like magic, trickery, and change, and kind of fucking with people. And you have Slaanesh, which her thing, his thing, the demon god thing of excess, which whether it would be drugs, touch, feel, murder, sex, lots of sex, I mean, it's kind of hard to do something of excess without sex. I feel like it kind of gets the point across, but it's not just that; it's other things as well. But lots of that, and drugs. So that's Slaanesha's thing, and a lot of them have space marines who are not all, but there's some space marines legions or chapters that are like dedicated to those specific gods, and you have some that are just more kind of like, I don't really follow a particular god. I just follow all of them because they all have something I like, and I like being powerful. Anyways, so yeah, and then the Chaos Space Marine stuff is. I'm starting to like a lot of the Chaos Space Marines I have noticed from the stories, which I'll get into later. Before I get into that, I want to talk about the Xenos. With those who don't know what Xeno is, it literally means alien. I didn't know what that word was until I got into Warhammer. So for my fellow smooth brains out there, yeah, Xeno means alien. So you got like Eldar, which a lot of the Xeno. Before I get into the Eldar, a lot of the Xeno stuff, mainly, at least the popular ones, except for like two of them, I would say, are essentially from fantasy brought into sci-fi, and they sci-fi them up a bit. So like Eldar is essentially just space elves. I mean, space elf with their own flair. I don't know how else to say it. That's what it is. Then you have Drukhari or Dark Eldar, which is again dark elves, but more horrifying and a lot more grim than your typical dark elf. In Warhammer, they are sadistic. You do not want to be captured by a dark elf. You do not want to be captured by them because they would do things that make you wish for death, to put it simply and safely for YouTube monetization. Not to be demonetized, just you don't want to be captured by them. That's all I'm saying. Then you have Tau, which essentially are just the Covenant from Halo, but more in a anime Gundam mech style. And then there's the Necrons, which essentially are just Egyptian Terminators, to put it more simply. They have a little more lore to them than they previously had. I'm not too much know about Necron lore to say, but from what I hear, it's really good. And what I hear a lot, Infinite and Divine, which is a book about Necrons, is really good, and I actually kind of want to read it. So someday, hopefully, I'll get to read that book. Or, I say read, listen to the audiobook. And then you have Tyranids. Tyranids are essentially... They're bugs. They're giant bugs that have a hive mind and they attack. Think of like Starship Troopers, the Flood, what else? Xenomorphs. But they're essentially your swarm bug hive mind thing, and they're pretty cool. I have a couple models, but that was mainly because I got the 10th edition starter box set because plastic. The cool thing about them is that not only they're kind of like not aesthetically they look cool, but they're like not from our galaxy. They're from a different galaxy, and they're coming into our galaxy at different points and different angles in our galaxy. Like they're not from here, and which is like there's cool theories about it, whether it's like some events that happen in Warhammer universe that probably brought them in here, or there's something worse and scarier and more dangerous than them outside and pushed them to us. I feel like that theory a lot more because it gives the sense that there's always something more dangerous out there. Plus, if they want, they can make a cool army out of it and show it, and I get to see cool painting miniatures out of that. See people who are way more talented than me actually do cooler things. But it's cool. And then my favorite Xenos faction, the best Xenos faction out there, is the Orcs. Orcs are awesome. Orcs are essentially like how you would imagine an orc, but in sci-fi. So they have very archaic things. They have machinery and weapons that should not work, but somehow work for whatever reason. And they talk in this British Cockney accent, like the dumb. I'm not gonna do the voice. I stopped myself there. I'm not embarrassed myself from that. And the whole thing of the power of imagination. So what I mean by that, for people who don't know, orcs have this kind of thing where if there's enough of them grouped together, if they believe in something, usually that something happens. For like example, they paint their vehicles red because they believe painting things red makes things go fast. So you have like orcs and buggies, or even like painting random things red, like missiles and stuff, to go fast because they believe that. Enough of them consciously believe that things that are painted red go fast, and it goes fast. It moves, and it's dumb. It's dumb, hilarious. What else? Green's the best color because they're green. Purple is the sneakiest color Because have you ever seen a purple orc? I don't think so. So they paint themselves purple because they believe it helps them sneak better. What else? I am like missing other things because my brain is thinking 1,000 miles an hour. It must be painted red or something. That was a bad joke. Oh, man. But yeah, they have this conscious thing that think that if enough of them believe in something, it usually this manifests or it happens. I mean, there's a story, I don't remember the exact book or whatnot, but there is a story that there's some orcs that, like, their ship, they're in space, ship's broken, but they're walking in their ship, like the open part where it's like open vastness of space, and nothing's happening to them. And then till one orc mentioned that, you know, how are we breathing in space, walking and breathing in space? And as soon as that one orc mentioned that and the other orcs realized, they got sucked up out of their ships and died. These guys are wacky, funny, and in some cases really dangerous. For those who don't know, don't let the goofiness fool you that even though these guys are mainly used for a comedic effect, they can be dangerous. There's a thing called the green tide when there's waves of them just shooting and chopping and batting and crumping. Crumping is like fighting and shooting the Daka, which Daka is like firepower, or like, yeah, like firepower, how much guns and how fast it shoots. And they go on a wah. A wah is essentially just war and orc. And they're just goofy. I love orcs. Orcs are awesome. They're one of my favorite Xenos race, and I'm starting to collect them. I got their combat patrol, and then one of my buddies gave me a Death Strike for Christmas as a Christmas gift. So now I'm gonna have to start building an orc army. And I want to talk about a bit of my favorite Space Marine legions. I like a lot of Space Marine legions. I think they're really cool. There's a lot of cool things about them because it's not just one thing. Each legion or chapter, I guess, for 40k essentially is, they all have their own unique theme and like style to them. So one of my favorites, this isn't in a particular order, these are just ones I like. Dark Angels. Dark Angels are probably the first legion or chapter that I've gotten into from lore perspective and miniatures, technically for both. I don't know how exactly why I got into the lore of Dark Angels. I think I was just looking for something and for the audio drama, and there was just some more audio dramas on Dark Angels at the time. So I got like not just digital but physical DV or CDs for Dark Angels, and they're really cool. They have a special place in my heart. There's a lot of cool things and about them. They have like this whole knightly aesthetic. There's very secret society, which at some points in lore it can be annoying once you get really deep into their lore. But overall, I love that knightly aesthetic, that kind of helmet with the wing. I don't know what you call it, like crests or something on like the sides of their helmets is really cool. The Deathwing, which is essentially their veteran Terminator squad, which Terminators are just more heavily armored Space Marine, which is crazy. The whole aesthetic is really cool. I love Dark Angels, and the book on the Primarch, the recent book, Sons of the Forest. Oh my gosh, I love them more because knowing about the Fallen and how their characters are, especially their Primarch, which if you don't know, Primarchs are essentially the father of the Space Marines. Each Space Marine has a lineage to a Primarch. So the Primarch Lionel Johnson and his like dynamic, his character change from his old lore to who he is currently is really good. I recommend that book, Sons of the Forest, if you're trying to get into Warhammer, or if you're a Warhammer fan who's just listening to some dude ramble and want to listen or read a good book. Sons of the Forest, I recommend it. It's top 5 books I've read. I say read, listen, because I don't read. As simple as that, I don't read. Death Guard. Death Guard is another faction. So that's for loyalists. There's a lot of other loyalists, but for what I collect and kind of more into, that's mainly it. The rest is mainly chaos side, because there's something more human about them on the chaos, which is ironic because the way they look is less human. For example, Death Guard, if you look at them, nothing about them signifies or any signs of them says human. But it's mainly their characters. A lot of the characters in the books and stuff, you kind of get a sense of them, and they show a bit more of their humanity. You kind of can relate more in a sense. Like, for example, Talos, if you read the Nightlords trilogy, which, if me saying that should know what is my other favorite Space Marine Legion. I guess Chaos Space Marine Legion at that point. But before I get to that, Death Guard. I got it. Death Guard. So Death Guard is another one mainly from the box set. When I tried to get into the tabletop This was around 8th edition, because I bought the 7th edition and the 8th edition box set, because 8th edition was the newest thing, and it was the... I didn't know what the whole thing with the lore, but I saw Death Guard and then Space Marines, just generic Space Marines. Well, it was Ultramarines, but neither here nor there. And then for the... was Dark's Vengeance? Yeah, Dark's Vengeance box, 7th edition box set. It was Dark Angels versus just Chaos Space Marines. So the whole thing was going to be the generic Space Marines, integrate them and make them Dark Angels, and then the generic Chaos, integrate them, turn them into Death Guard. So Death Guard is a legion that I got into because of the box set, and they just look freaking cool. Seeing that box set and looking at these giant hulking zombie monstrous like Space Marines, I don't know what to say. Like these guys look awesome, and in the most like disgusting sense. Like something about the whole zombie plague aesthetic, I don't know why, but I see it and monkey brain go, that looks cool, that is freaking awesome. So yeah, and then I kind of get more into the lore, learning about who they are before what they became as of now, and their Primarch Mortarion, which I like Mortarion. I know a lot of people don't like him, or at least his character, which I haven't really got into all his books, just his one Primarch book, which I really love, top 5, which I haven't really read a lot, so it's a short list. But yeah, Death Guard, I love the look. They look freaking cool. Their characters are pretty awesome too. They're very joyous. A lot of them are very like happy, jolly type of guys for the most part, even though they're like plague, disgusting, ridden looking creatures. But they're very like happy fellows, and they have like these little Nurgle demons, these Nurglings, and they call them Little Lords, which I think is really funny and cute. How they're just like, oh look, hello my little lord, and it's just like, it's cute, and in a disgusting sense, and I guess in a morbid, disgusting sense. Yeah, and then there's the Night Lords. The Night Lords are, I think at the moment, my favorite space or Chaos Space Marine Legion, and because of the book or the book series, the Night Lords trilogy is the best book and one I recommend to a lot of people for Warhammer. It is phenomenal. So when I was looking at what I want to get into for Space Marines and stuff, and I see Night Lords, or I saw Bricky's video. For a lot of people who are new, Bricky's video is probably the best way to get into like starting into Warhammer, and he explains Night Lords. I'm just like, whoever wants to be the psychopaths. For those who don't know, Night Lords are essentially the antithesis of Space Marines. Space Marines are the stoic, heroic people who charge in the battle in the face of death. They do not care. Death and duty and honor, that type of deal. They don't care about that. Night Lords won't go in a battle unless they have a high advantage of winning. These guys are essentially scum, and they were formed by criminals, like murderers, other words of I can't say, just scum of the earth. And they like to torture and harm and do terrible things to people because they think it's fun, and why not? If they get joy out of it, the whole thing about them, their whole shtick is like fear, terror. They like to do things in a sneaky fashion that terrorize people, because that's like how they were brought up to fight. While the Dark Angels and Death Guard were more kind of like guys that go head in the battle. These guys, the Night Lords, are more just like, we're gonna get in the shadows, scare the hell out of you until you submit to our will. We're gonna torture, terrorize, and do anything we can without losing as many men or casualties as possible. So that's their whole thing. It's like, why would I ever want to go for a faction that's just pure evil and like scum? And then I read the Night Lords trilogy. I say read again. Listen to the Night Lords trilogy, their audiobook. Their audiobook is the best book to this day and one of my favorites. Talos, Mikutian, I feel like I'm not saying his name right. Zal, I'm missing other names. I feel like the Night Lords, their books, really humanizes them, and you get a good sense of who they are. For the most part. I mean, it's kind of more because it's just this warband and characters, how they are. And Night Lords, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Not all Night Lords are like Talos or like any of these characters. In the sense they have some form of a weird, like if you wrong them, they'll skin you alive for days and stuff. If you're their slave. But they also will protect you because you're their property. Others will just not care. It's weird. Like these specific characters, it's not all Night Lords, but it's because of these characters, I am a fan and in love with this Chaos Space Marine because of that book, and it's a recommend. I could talk more and more, and then there's also Comrade Kurz, who's an interesting character. Probably not my favorite Primarch, but he's interesting enough where it's like you're kind of getting in the mind of a guy, almost a psychopath, kind of like the whole Silence of the Lamb. You're like figuring out who this guy is and why the things he does, his reasoning. But they're generally interesting people and probably the best. And I grow to love them, and now I'm trying to collect a Night Lord's army, build them up, using Horus Heresy models, because how the Chaos Space Marine, like, basic model looks. The painting, if you've never painted a Chaos Strip, it can be annoying sometimes, especially if you're trying to build an army of them. So, Horus Heresy models is the way to go. Plus, like, I just got a 3D printer. I'm going to use 3D printed bits to kind of flavor them up a bit, but I have my whole thing with them. I'm going to try to build them up and make them as unique as possible. And the last one that I'm slowly growing to love, and I think it's because mainly the Primarch of their legion, is the World Eaters. World Eaters are a Space Marine legion that are aligned with Khorne, as one of the demon gods I mentioned earlier, who are just literally berserking slaughter super soldiers, like to the point where all they know is rage and blood and kill, slaughter. That's their whole shtick. They're very one-noted from what I know, as like, I don't know how else you can make him more unique, but there is characters like Karn, from what I hear, he's like a really good character, and glimpses of what I've seen, I'm liking him, and Agron. Agron is the Primarch, the father of the World Eaters. He's a demon now, but before he became a demon, he was an interesting character, and one that I feel really sad for, and I kind of empathize. But I'm not really going to get into the whole thing. I'm still learning about him, and I want to learn more. I want to get into his book. He's just really cool. Okay, his model is really cool. Him as a character, I don't know yet, but from what I do know, I really sympathize with him. And I'm starting to like the aesthetic and the style of World Eaters. World Eaters, their whole style is berserking rage. I'm rushing you and hitting you with a freaking chainsaw, axe, or just a blade, or just charging at you in a melee and trying to kill everyone as bloody as possible. That's their whole thing. It's charge in, melee, and slaughter and kill. And that's, I'm starting to like that kind of more simplistic game style of just like, yeah, just charge in and just have fun with it. It's kind of, I feel like it's like pretty fun. I also want to get in a little bit on the audio dramas and audiobooks. I already rambled a bunch about the books and stuff and the audio dramas. I'm not really getting too into it, but there are one of the reasons I got into it, and I kind of want to talk about it. The audio dramas, listening to those, especially the Orc audio dramas, oh my gosh, it's such fun media to listen to a bunch of orcs and how they operate and just visualizing it. It's just, they're so cool. It's just a fun time listening to the audiobooks or the audio dramas. And I honestly recommend listening to you don't have to go to the official GW Games Workshop forums. There's people on YouTube that I'll probably link in the bottom that I recommend listen to, because they make audio dramas like for free. I mean, it's YouTube. You can listen to it for free. I recommend it. I'll link them down below. I can't remember any at the top of my head right now. I think there's one that's like Voxline. I'm probably misremembering that. I'll put them up here so you can see, and I'll also link them down below, because these guys need some love, and I feel like they're not getting enough attention, even though they have a lot of subscribers. I don't know. I just want to put it out there for them. And then some of the audiobooks, I want to recommend. Like I said, the Night Lord trilogy, I recommend that. That's a good audiobook. There's also Dark Imperium, which is really good. I actually really like that, seeing two Primarchs that first came back to the setting. For those who don't know, they were there before, then they disappeared, or kind of put in stasis, and now they're slowly coming back into the setting. So Dark Imperium is seeing two of the brothers coming back and fighting, and getting perspective of one of them, how waking up to an empire that he once built, seeing what it is today, the disgust and decay of what it is today. I also recommend the Mortarion book, The Pale King. I think that's a really good book. Also, like I said again, The Lion, Son of the Forest. That is an amazing book. I do recommend it. That one's a fun time, and seeing the lion come back into the setting, that is awesome. Recommend that book. 15 Hours. That is a good book as well for those who want more kind of on the perspective of the average guardsman. of just like a regular dude going into the battlefield. It gives this kind of All Quiet in the Western Front vibes, which I really enjoy. It's a good book. It's not that long from what I remember, but I recommend it. I love it. And lastly, Gene Father, which is one of their newer books, essentially about the Adeptus Mechanicus, which I forgot about them. They're a faction, which essentially the whole thing is robots. They're humans that are like cybernetically enhanced themselves, like trans-human robotic people, and they worship a machine god and stuff. They're really wacky and weird, but aesthetically they look really cool. I kind of want to collect some of them, but they're very expensive, and I already have enough plastic as it is to build and stuff. Maybe one day, but today's not that day. Anyways, it's one of their characters from that sub-faction that essentially meets and kind of battles one of the characters from a Chaos Space Marine faction from the Emperor's Children, which those are the Space Marines that worship Slaanesh. So their whole thing is kind of like excess and stuff. Good book. I recommend that. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. The reason I sound different and you hear that creaking in the background is because I'm recording this at a different time, and that creaking is my ceiling fan. Trust me, it is. Just believe me. Yeah, this video was originally supposed to be a short video of why I like Warhammer as a hobby and a setting, but you can tell the recording, it is a lot longer than it's supposed to be, so I'm cutting this up into 2 parts, and I hope you enjoyed it. The next video should be coming on sometime next week, hopefully. This is supposed to be a quick short video, but it took a lot more time with editing, a lot more than I expected. So yeah, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe, comment down below what's your favorite lore bit, or if you have any fun lore facts or any book recommendations, let me know. Write in the comments, I'm really curious, and let me know if you guys like this video. This is something new. So yeah, bye.